It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Titans designated cornerback Christian Fulton to return to practice on Wednesday. He remains on IR at the moment. The team also signed quarterback Kevin Hogan and wide receiver Chris Rowland, a local product, to the practice squad. Cornerback Chris Jones also signed to the active roster from the practice squad. Preds picked up a road win at the Dallas Stars on Thursday, 4-2. Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene each with a goal at 7-5-1. The Preds remain on the road at the St. Louis Blues. Tonight, it's a 7 p.m. puck drop. College hoops, Vanderbilt's season opened up with a 91-72 win over Alabama State. Jordan Wright with 16 points, Scottie Pippen Jr. with 15, and the Tennessee Lady Vols opened with a 59-49 win over Southern Illinois. Thursday Night Football tonight is in Miami. The 2-7 Dolphins hosting the 6-2 Baltimore Ravens. Kickoff is at 7:20. Westwood One coverage right here on The Zone. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome in to 104.5 The Zone. So happy to have you guys along for the next 3 hours or so. Buck Reising here with you, Lucas Panzica, making it happen behind the scenes. Fun show today. Mina Kimes of ESPN is going to be here coming up next. We got a lot of stuff to talk about with the Titans in the world of the NFL. Saints coming to town. We'll begin that preview officially today after they hit the practice field yesterday. Mike Vrabel had some interesting things to say. You're going to hear from the coordinators, Todd Downing and Shane Bowen, later on in the show. Those guys are making quite a name for themselves nationally. It's pretty interesting to see how the narrative, once it's picked up by somebody like Ian Rappaport, for example, who's citing Mike Vrabel's prowess when it comes to scouting coaches and assistant coaches and talent, where you got Matt LaFleur as a head coach, Arthur Smith as a head, and the Matt LaFleur experience might look a little different without Aaron Rodgers. That remains to be seen. But Arthur Smith doing some things with Matt Ryan, Cordell Patterson, spicy. We're going to talk to Mina about that and a lot of other stuff, and whether the Titans have the best front seven in the NFL right now, because I think there's an argument to be made. If you want to get involved, 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. We welcome your participation. I want to start, though, with a couple of news items that's happening in the NFL, and really, shockingly enough, on a local Nashville sports talk show. Let's go to the Carolina Panthers, shall we? Has anybody seen what's been happening with Mac Jones, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, and Brian Burns? And that's not even to mention that Cam Newton apparently is going back there today. Time is a flat circle. But Brian Burns, one of the defensive ends for Carolina. Carolina got a pretty good defense this year. Fast, young, super aggressive. Daquan Jones making some plays for Carolina. They were one of the best teams in the NFL to start the season, and then Sam Darnold did Sam Darnold things. But that's not the story here. The story is Mac Jones looking like he was trying to twist the ankle of Brian Burns after the Carolina defense caused a turnover. This was Sunday in Carolina. Mac Jones put out an apology basically saying, yeah, I didn't mean to hurt anybody. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. And you go and look at the 10 million camera angles, and you can see it on the film. You can see it from every which way because everybody's got a camera in that stadium. And they're trying to figure out why Brian Burns, giant rage monster for the Carolina Panthers, is writhing in pain on the ground, and Mac Jones is just standing up looking around to make sure nobody saw him do anything. He twists the ankle of Brian Burns, and so Brian Burns, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Lucas, we have that audio. Brian Burns gets up at the podium yesterday. By the way, the Titans will play the New England Patriots, and Mac Jones, ankle-twisting Mac Jones, allegedly, on Thanksgiving weekend, November 28th. This is what Brian Burns had to say with some words of advice for his fellow edge rushers that might play the New England Patriots.
It would be nice to have an apology. Mac. It would be nice to have an apology, but I I mean, it's not gonna happen. And however the NFL handles it, it's on them. I would just like to play them again. And I wish all my fellow DN brothers happy hunting. And that's all.
Oh, dear God. Happy hunting. If you haven't seen what Brian Burns looks like, now Mac Jones has eluded Brian Burns for the time being, but I'm certain they'll see each other at least once in the next 4 years as the divisions rotate.
It's the smile he says it with, though.
Oh, yeah, because he can picture the way that he's going to be feasting on Mac Jones's spine the next time he sees them. I mean, Mac Jones plays Myles Garrett this week. This is a defensive end. Now, the Browns lost on Halloween, but Myles Garrett had a fake graveyard of quarterbacks that he sacked in his front yard before Halloween. You don't think that every other defensive edge player in the NFL is looking at Mac Jones being like, all right, that's who you are? We'll see you on Sunday, big boy. Patriots line isn't that good. You can do some things in the pocket as far as moving around, but you're not getting away from anybody, Mac Jones. This is something that's going to be interesting to watch with how Mac Jones and quarterbacks, because this is the larger point, and I bring this up because the Titans are going to play him in a couple weeks, and I don't think this is too far-fetched. I wonder if, given what's happening with NFL officiating right now, if refs aren't going to be playing that Brian Burns clip on a loop saying, hey, we've got to officiate Mac Jones even more differently than we're already officiating every other player on the field other than the quarterback. We're going to have to not completely change the way that we're looking at this, but more closely monitor it in a way where this can be game-changing calls. I mean, we didn't talk about what happened with the Bears and the Steelers on Monday night with the ref hip-checking Cassius March, the linebacker, who did a full roundhouse kick in celebration. They threw the flag on the taunt for the roundhouse kick, but because they were more closely watching Cassius March after the fact, the way that he's kind of flexing towards the sideline and the stupidity of the taunting rules. By the way, if you didn't see the news yesterday, Mike Vrabel got added to the competition committee. So Mike has made his stance known about he's very much aligned with the rest of the coaches, and we're trying to clean the game up, quote unquote. And I would say that if you are a defensive player and you're seeing the refs very much make games about themselves. I mean, what Tony Correnti did to hip check Cassius March on Monday night was just as much taunting as what Cassius March did at any point in that game. You don't think that Mike Vrabel's going to have a different train of thought as his defense is getting ready to try and tee off on Mac Jones for 60 minutes in New England? That game doesn't already have enough intrigue around it that now you're going to be watching if Mac Jones is officiated any differently because, Brian Burns just put a hit out on him. That's got to be one of the scariest things in football if you're a quarterback. I wish all my fellow defensive ends happy hunting. And then that just big smile that comes across his face. I'm certain that Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry, Bud Dupree, Danico Autry are looking at that 2 weeks from now and being like, okay, try that with us. That's arguably, and we'll talk about that because a lot of people are looking at the Titans like one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL. It's really, I'm curious to know how much the league is willing to let go as far as the officials are concerned, right? Because this year and the past 2 seasons really have felt differently because these game-changing calls affect the gambling money so drastically. The NFL has been a follower as far as allowing these gambling partners to come in, even though it's, billions and billions of untapped revenue that they've just been sitting on and letting the NBA get out there first and letting the NHL get out there first and letting the other professional sports leagues do these deals and saying, all right, the precedent is there. Now we'll kind of wade into it. But with the NFL, so many fewer games, so much more impact that you can see where a referee on a Monday Night Football game where Justin Fields does some interesting things, where Ben Roethlisberger looks closer to form. We're not actually talking about the football elements of that, other than the Steelers' defense is insane. We're talking about the officiating. And frankly, a call so egregious where Tony Correnti, who's the ref, backs his hips up into Cassius March so as to bump him and then, like, dramatically throws the flag up in the air, just as much looking like he's taunting a player as if Cassius March was taunting the Steelers sideline. It's one of the most egregious things I've ever seen. And frankly, he should be suspended without question. I know we're 4 days late on this. I know the outrage feels a little different on Thursday as opposed to Tuesday after this game takes place. But I'm listening to that Brian Burns clip, and that's all I can think of, especially with how much more impact and how much louder things are going to be around missed calls or egregious officiating errors now that there's so much money sitting on top of all of these games.
You know what it reminds me of? There was a Music City Bowl a few years ago, maybe 2017. Kentucky was playing Northwestern right here in Nissan Stadium. Benny Snell, now with the Steelers, was still the running back of the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yep.
He was hit to the ground. An official came over and kind of tried to help him up, like stuck his arm out and tried to get Snell up. And Snell, getting up in the heat of the moment, said, "Nah, I don't want your help." And he kind of pushed the guy's arm aside. Referee immediately threw a flag. Snell was ejected from the game.
It is
inserting yourself in that moment.
Oh.
It's just the worst thing a referee can do, and it's happening way too often this season.
Tony Correnti, that's as look at me a thing as I've ever seen from an official. Ever in my life. And he did it with impunity. There's been no measures taken. And Mike Vrabel's telling us in a press conference after the fact when the refs, think about how different the game against the Los Angeles Rams. It was already out of hand for the Rams, and maybe it doesn't make a difference in the way that we're talking about. But if that game is at all closer and Jalen Ramsey gets to stay in because they change the second taunting call on Jalen Ramsey to what I can't remember. What did they end up changing it to? I can't remember what they changed it to.
They said it was a personal foul, not an unsportsmanlike conduct.
Regardless, right? They changed the result of what would have been an automatic ejection.
Like, what are we doing?
It's so stupid. And Mike Vrabel's sitting there telling us, listen, guys, I don't have any different views than you do from the press box. You want answers, tweet at NFL officiating. Mike doesn't want to get fined, and he's going on the competition committee, so he's going to have a good relationship with these refs because he knows that he knows more about the damn rule book than the refs do.
It was like an indie, and that's not even knowing the rule book. Like, am I the one that has to throw the challenge? Why am I the only one here that saw that he caught that pass, and I have to throw the challenge flag to get it to be a completion?
It was so much better because he had the challenge flag in his back pocket when he brings it out at the press conference. Because I asked him that question. I'm like, Mike, like the calls are kind of delayed. The flags are coming in kind of late. He's like, nah, late flags, whatever. But like the fact that we're having to stop the game and that they stop the play, they blow it dead. Where, maybe A.J. Brown gets tackled and it doesn't matter. Maybe there's no yards after contact implications.
It's the principle.
It's the principle of the thing. Mike Vrabel's got the flag in the back pocket. He's acting like he's throwing it at us in the press conference. It is, Mike Vrabel was Carrot Top for a set right there. Prop comic. We'll talk to Mina Kimes about all the craziness that's happening in the NFL right now. We'll find out whether she is somebody who watches the film as diligently as anybody in sports media right now, how she feels the Titans front seven stacks up with the best in the league, because there's another really good one coming to Nashville on Sunday in the New Orleans Saints. Mina Kimes of ESPN coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you till 1 o'clock. A lot of things happening in the NFL. It's a weird weekend. So we welcome in one of the best NFL analysts in the business, and maybe you don't necessarily know that by her Twitter timeline because all I'm seeing is things about X-Men Twitter, and now I'm deeply concerned with the rabbit hole that Mina Kimes of ESPN has found herself in the depths of the internet. What's up, Mina?
Hey, how's it going? X-Men Twitter is infinitely better than NFL Twitter because the temperature is a lot lower, even though people do like to argue.
What is the greatest argument on X-Men Twitter right now? What are people
Well,
debating?
I was responding to someone saying Storm was overrated. Worst takes I've ever heard, and I kicked off some a debate, pardon me, on my timeline.
Well, if you want to see more debate, Mina Kimes is all over First Take. She's on NFL Live, one of the best shows on sports television right now, the Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny as the podcast that you should help make yourself smarter about football with all the great guests that Mina brings on. So I guess what was the weirdest result to you, Mina? Because I think there's a lot of people still pretty blown away by the fact that the Titans went into L.A. and smacked the Rams around, but that was like the fifth weirdest result of the NFL weekend.
That was the most impressive result, in terms of what it says about the Titans, given the level of competition. The weirdest result for me was Bills-Jags, because I watched the Jaguars the week before get stomped by Seattle, and I thought this is the worst team in the NFL. I did have some skepticism about the Bills, kind of given the level of competition and some of the issues I've seen on offense, but I did not at all think you'd get 9-6 Jaguars. That blew me away.
It was incredible to watch, and of course, Titans fans delighted with that result, given how the AFC stacks up. Is the AFC actually any good? I mean, I understand what we saw Lamar Jackson do again late, and certainly in the second half of that game against the Vikings, it felt very much like that win that they were able to get over the Colts, where you saw him, legitimately win from the pocket in a way that I don't think people are accustomed to seeing from him in the last couple of years. But outside of the Ravens and the Titans, what else is good about the AFC right now?
I think all of the AFC teams, and that includes the Titans, by the way, are flawed in some way or the other. The Ravens, for example, have a very dynamic and I think improving offense, which is exciting, but have some real issues in pass defense. Now they just lost a free safety, Sean Elliott. That's it, compounding, obviously, losing Marcus Peters earlier in the season. That's going to be a problem for them. And then, with the Bills, we saw, I think that they're one of the better defenses in the league, but the offense, the run game has some issues. The offensive line has some issues as well. Had a couple players injured versus Jacksonville. So, there's no perfect team, which is partially why I think the Titans are where they are, positioned at the top of the conference, because, I said they have issues, but they are still extremely balanced. And that's, to me, what's taken me by surprise the most. I expected this offense to be explosive, though I was curious to see how things would change with Todd Downing coming in as offensive coordinator. I did not expect this Titans pass rush to be what it is, which is one of the best four-man rushes in the NFL.
It's crazy. I was talking to Greg Cosell about this yesterday, and the way that they're scheming up all these games and twists and stunts up front and how they tailor it, and maybe this is commonplace throughout the course of the NFL. Maybe this is just something that Mike Vrabel illuminated to us yesterday in our press conference with him, but how they're kind of tailoring those twists and games to the specific quarterback that they're playing to take advantage of, well, maybe Josh Allen prefers to roll to his right, so how can we keep him from doing that with the pressure that we're generating? And being able to do it with 4 this season, just makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, you see a little bit of the New England influence there, I think, in terms of what you're describing with the game plan specific stunts and, just thinking about Jeffrey Simmons looping around to force the interception. It did remind me of certain plays you saw in New England over the years on defense. But it's so key in the NFL right now because you guys are, I'm sure, aware of the blueprint right now for stopping a lot of the league's more talented quarterbacks is playing those too high shells, not necessarily saying that's what the Titans do, but most importantly, not having to allocate extra resources to your pass rush. So to be able to kind of create that sort of havoc without blitzing, it gives them so much more freedom on the back end, especially as, of course, these Titans defensive backs are getting healthy.
Yeah, Mina Kimes of ESPN here with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking about the Titans, the result against the Rams. If Jeffrey Simmons was an X-Man, Mina, who would he be?
I think Wolverine is the right one. Coming back from injuries that way, and then just kind of just being such a weapon on the front. He is unbelievable. And in the conversation, my colleagues at NFL Live, Ryan Clark and Dan Orlowski, broke down the Byard pick and talked about him being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I think Simmons has to be in the mix as well. I don't think he will win it, to be clear.
Sure.
But the way that those pass rushers all work together is what makes this team so good. And again, I did not see that coming at all. I've always been a Ryan Tannehill enthusiast. I thought even with Derrick Henry going down, I expected still to see good things from the offense. I did not expect this defensive line to be so good.
Yeah, we'll talk about the offense here in just a second, because obviously the offense did not have a good night against the Rams, and there were a great many reasons for that. But at this point, Mina, when you look at Kevin Byard and the way that this Titans secondary is playing, despite Christian Fulton, their best corner, being unavailable throughout the course of this four-game stretch that they've had and 5 wins that they've strung together, it is something that's interesting to me. I'm wondering how much, as somebody who watches the film, how much legitimate development you're seeing from the back end. Young guys like Amani Hooker and Chris Jackson, Christian Fulton when he was right, just because the pass rush is allowing them the opportunity to execute their assignments better. There's one play by Chris Jackson that comes to mind specifically where he's letting Robert Woods run right by him because he knows he has safety help. He peels off and makes a great play on Cooper Kupp, almost comes up with the interception, and that's not something that we'd seen from these young guys last season.
Yeah, I did not know who Jackson was. I'm not going to lie, before the season. And in this game in particular, I was like, whoa, impressed. Yeah. Same thing like the week before. I can't remember if I talked to you about this, but Dane Cruikshank giving Travis Kelce the business. Again, that's
crazy.
Is certainly not an outcome I saw coming, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, the development obviously is extremely impressive. Elijah Molden's my guy I'm a Huskies fan, so I did know about him, and I was excited when they drafted him. I was excited when they Bolton. I was surprised to see him fall in the draft. And it's really, it's impressive because this is obviously a Titans defense that, despite having a defensive head coach, has really struggled and underwhelmed, I think. So this feels kind of like the fruition of a lot of development coaching over the last couple of years. And, it's really impressive. The other day I tweeted something about Matt LaFleur being a Coach of the Year candidate, but I really should have mentioned Mike Vrabel as well, because this year what he has done is extremely impressive.
Mina Kimes of ESPN here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So what do the Titans expect to see? Because, you mentioned their flaws, and obviously without Derrick Henry, they're a different-looking team. The bigger question, I think, coming into this past game was how defenses would play them, not necessarily how they might change without Derrick, because they're still going to do what they do. Mike wants to run the ball. They want to work their passing game off play action, those quick play action concepts with crossers over the middle, not necessarily with the outbreaking routes, because it seems like Tannehill struggles with those. Yeah. But as you look at their flaws on offense right now, how much deeper than the offensive line does it go, or does it start and end with that unit?
That's definitely the most important factor, especially when you lose kind of the advantage of having Henry later in games, earlier, threatening. And I thought the Rams actually played them pretty well. It's funny because it was, such a decisive victory, but I didn't feel like I learned a ton about the Titans offense in this game. I feel like I learned more about the Titans defense.
Yeah.
Honestly, obviously, that's why they won the game too, going out the way they did. What I wanted to see was, okay, what does the Titans offense look like when they're not ahead? Didn't have that opportunity. Titans fans, I'm sure, are thrilled, but we don't really know that yet. I think that it's funny. Like Julio Jones, I'm sure has been underwhelming. Well, I know he's underwhelming as a fantasy player because he's on one of my teams. But as a football player, he really comes up with some clutch catches and did so in this game, really difficult ones. And I think he's going to have to do more of that going forward, because I don't see the Titans offense you described is the one I anticipate seeing through the rest of the season. The run game didn't look great, but we're still integrating Adrian Peterson into the offense. He
Ugh.
didn't really look like himself. So
God.
it's really hard to say what it's going to look like going forward.
I thought Adrian Peterson looked great for 36 years old and having been almost a part of Dancing with the Stars cast before he joined the Tennessee
That's
Titans. No,
that is fair.
There's a lot to be desired about what that running game looks like without Derek. He's a 2,000-yard back in a 1,500-yard offense. With the Saints, Mina, this is an incredibly opportunistic defense. It looks like they may be without C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's one of their really good defensive backs. I don't know necessarily that P.J. Williams is going to be able to replicate what Gardner-Johnson allows them to do defensively. And also the front seven is one of the NFL's best. What kind of challenges do the Saints pose up front?
Yeah, well, everything you described is pretty accurate. The Saints defense is pretty consistent year to year now. They don't really have to blitz to get pressure. One of the stouter run defenses in the league, especially getting David Onyemata back in the middle. Very good linebacking group. And then, they play a lot of cover two man. So it's really just about matchups, trying to get I imagine Lattimore is probably going to take A.J. Brown in this one. So it's about counting on the other guy, Julio, for example, to win. In the Falcons game versus the Saints, they really benefited from using Cordero Patterson and getting the matchups they wanted on linebacker. So I think the Titans have to ask, is there any way, whether it's using our tight ends or even the backs that we have in the receiving game, if A.J. Brown is locked down, how can we get those guys the ball?
You bring up something that's pretty interesting, and getting A.J. Brown the ball has been, something that they've been trying to accomplish, but he's struggled to catch the ball, oddly enough, throughout the course of the season, even though he's coming off a pretty good stretch, particularly in that Colts game. How big an Arthur Smith stan are you right now, given what's happening with Matt Ryan, what's happening with Cordell Patterson, Kyle Pitts? They have no wide receivers, Mina, and yet it's one of the most fun offenses in the sport.
It's taken a second. The beginning of the season was a little bit slow, interesting enough, when they did have, Calvin Ridley, but it is really impressive. I mean, especially because the offensive line there is not playing super well. It's not a good unit. And so for Matt Ryan to have this kind of bounce back season and for him to be able to get what he's getting out of those weapons is super impressive. But I think also, a big concern of mine about the Titans coming into the season was going to be the loss of Smith and Todd Downing, who's kind of been up and down in his past stops. And I think they've really hit on, a formula over the last few weeks. Granted, that was a lot of that was with Henry, that I have been impressed by as well. So I think both coordinators are doing, Arthur Smith's the head coach, but both coaches are doing a very good job with their offenses, given some challenges and adversity along the way.
Whose creativity, as far as their play calling style, the offense and the concepts that they're running right now, who when you watch the tape is impressing you the most? Who's jumping off the film?
From a offensive coordinator point of view?
Yes. Or
good.
defense, if you got one. I didn't think that defense would factor in, but
well, defensively, I think what the Patriots are doing, like that's really like the most normie answer you can give.
But
it's actually
okay.
taken them. Well, and like I said, there's a lot of crossover between the Titans and the Pats, so there's always some interest there in watching that defense. But there's a lot of the DNA there, and yeah, I think defensively, the way that they've sort of evolved over the course of the season, adjusting to the personnel that they have. Talked about this a little bit on my podcast this week, Mina Kimes featuring Lenny. Check it out. But yeah, it's been really impressive, unsurprisingly, given Bill Belichick and kind of his ability to change the game plan, given whatever offense they're playing. And then offensively, I know they're coming off of a real stinker, but the Cowboys offense is my favorite to watch in the NFL. Again, another week to week, really changing the game plan, what Kellen Moore does in terms of sequencing, run and pass plays, his use of different personnel groupings, just a lot of creativity there, taking advantage of the talent they have.
If you're Jerry Jones and Kellen Moore wants to be the head coach of the Cowboys next season, do you kick Mike McCarthy out for Kellen Moore just to keep him?
That's going to be a tough question. It's tough. It's funny because that's kind of not too dissimilar from what happened with Jason Garrett, obviously.
Right.
It's tough. That's because that puts a lot of pressure, especially assuming that the Cowboys win the division and go to the playoffs. I think it really depends on kind of how far they get, candidly, because if the Cowboys get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, that's something you consider. But if they make a deep playoff run, it'd be pretty hard to do that given the precedent.
Mina Kimes, for all your X-Men hot takes and NFL analysis, you can see her on NFL Live. The Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny has Jeff Schwartz on it this weekend, a Titans fan favorite. I say with great sarcasm. They despise Jeff Schwartz. He loves to troll the Titans fans.
Does he? We didn't talk Titans this week, so.
Well, listen, it's worth going to the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny for all of their great guests and all of the great insights and analysis that you can find. And, of course, I mean, NFL Live Spectacular First Take. What aren't you doing right now? I see you on SportsCenter every time I'm on the air. What aren't you doing right now, man?
I am not on our NBA show. But I love the NBA.
You made it all the way through this interview without taking an Andrew Luck shot. I appreciate you, Mina. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye. Thanks, guys. Tighten up.
Mina Kimes of ESPN. V-Love tweets, more Mina Kimes on Nashville radio, please. She knows her stuff. We'll come back and we'll react to what Mina had to say. I think there's some good stuff in there about this Titans front seven right now, particularly the front four and one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, the Titans. That's next. A lot of good info there with Mina Kimes. See? There are national people that watch your football team. Of course, we got some in the comments on YouTube. By the way, if you want to interact with the show, I know we had some calls earlier while Mina was on regarding Big Jeff and whether this is actually the best pass rush in football right now. I'll give you some numbers as to how you can very easily make that case. 615-737-1045. And if not the Titans, who? Who has the best front seven in the NFL right now? I would make the argument for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would make the argument for the New Orleans Saints, who the Titans will see here at Nissan Stadium on Sunday. I would probably go with the Bucs too, although they're not playing as well as you might think. Devin White's having kind of an off year, and JPP hasn't factored in the way that he has, at least for them, the last couple of seasons. So you can put the Titans up there with any of the best. Do they actually have, though, the best pass rush at this point? 615-737-1045. Because then, people like JV got to come in the YouTube chat and ruin the experience. Mina, as fake as they come, never talks about them nationally and now want to talk. Keep it moving. No, Mina, I asked Mina Kimes to be here, and I thought that you and everybody else, JV, might enjoy some informed analysis from one of the smartest minds in football. And you know what Mina did for about 20 minutes and change there? She absolutely delivered, because Mina doesn't have an opinion. I mean, she has opinions on things, but the tape is not opinion-based. That's why we talk to people like Mina. That's why I do a podcast with Cosell, because it's not, if you want opinion, I can do opinion. I can't do what Mina and Greg do. That's why we have smart guests on this show. So you're welcome, JV, for the insight that Mina was able to give to you, because I invited her on as our guest, and you would be wise to treat her more respectfully, given the kind of knowledge she just dropped on you. She's got a hell of a lot smarter about your football team. 615-737-1045 is the number. So do the Titans actually have the best pass rush? There's a lot of good information out there to indicate that if they're not the best, they're certainly up there among them. For the Titans right now, and we've just received supplemental notes from Titans PR this week, they are getting so much pressure on opposing quarterbacks during this 5-game win streak right now. During the Titans' current 5-game winning streak, which started back in Jacksonville when I was staying at the same hotel as Urban Meyer. I think that was the week of the creepy Uncle Herb scandal. So we've come a long way, the Jags have. Winners of 2 of their last 3. Look at that. Spicy. Titans' defensive front, however, is being rated and is rated among the NFL's best as far as affecting opposing quarterbacks right now. In the last 5 games, the Titans' defense has generated... All right, Lucas, you want to play a game? You want to try this? I don't trust you to do this well.
Let's do it. Look, I just give you my guess. It's not my fault that it doesn't fall however you want it to fall.
No. I think you're actively trying to undermine the bit every time when you wildly outbid the number that it's actually supposed to be and then just completely take it, which honestly ends up being better comedically. That's why I'm convinced you're doing it on purpose.
I'm going to give you my legitimate guess. What are you going to say?
How many total quarterback pressures have the Titans gotten in the last 5 games? Total quarterback pressures.
Well, I know Jeff himself had 9 on Sunday, right?
10.
Wow. I'm going to say that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I'm going to say in the last 5 games, 23.
96.
Oh, my God.
96 total quarterback pressures according to Next.
All right, so either I
stats.
ruin the game or I come off just sounding like a complete idiot.
Well, sure, but either way is good comedy because either you're pissed or I'm pissed, and I think we do better radio that way. So, it's the audience that wins, if not us. 96 total quarterback pressures. There's no 2 players in football in the last 5 weeks that have more pressures individually than Jeff Simmons, 27, as an interior defensive lineman. Where is this coward that was telling me Jeff Simmons doesn't affect the game? It's one person on Twitter. It's the only person on Twitter dumb enough to think this way. But I demand that he call this radio show and try to defend himself because that's one of the most asinine things I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, 27 pressures for Big Jeff. Danico Autry, 20. Jeff has 5.5 sacks. Danico has 5. The Titans have 23 on the season. They had 19 all of last year. That ranks 96 pressures in the last 5 games. It's second in the NFL from week 5 to week 9, behind only, can you guess? Aaron Donald and the Los Angeles Rams. There has been no player to put more pressure on the quarterback in that stretch than Jeff Simmons. Jeff is playing out of his mind football right now. He has had 30 quarterback pressures since the Jags game. 30. 10 in last week's win over the Rams. 3 sacks. Danico Autry right there with him. Yannick Ngakoue is third. Myles Garrett fourth, behind Jeff Simmons and Danico Autry. Are you kidding me? It's crazy how much better and how much more optimistic you feel about your football team because they can get consistent pressure, because they can make Matt Stafford make as dumb a decision as we've seen Matt Stafford make all season. It's rare when you can talk about the competency level of a quarterback like Carson Wentz and Matt Stafford doing the exact same thing a week later because of the way that they're scheming up pressure, because of the way that they're game planning their rush to individually affect quarterbacks. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in on the conversation. Titans are wrecking opposing quarterbacks right now. It has been truly, truly impressive to watch. Harold Landry is in the NFL's top 3 in that stretch as far as sacks are concerned. He's got 9 total on the season. Tied for third place in the NFL right now. He's got 6.5 sacks in the last 5 weeks. Pay that man his money. Jeff Simmons looking for a contract coming up here soon, too. Ryan in Lebanon is up first on 104.5 The Zone. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, Buck. Love the show.
Thank you.
Hey, we just want to talk about the tight end position real quick. It seems, it's different every week from the tight ends. Jeff Swaim or Michael Pruitt, not really seeing a whole lot of Ferkser. And so I just want to get your take on that. Is Michael Pruitt the new number 1 tight end? I just want to get your take on that and tighten up, boys.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. 615-737-1045. I don't think they have a tight end 1. I think it varies from week to week. I don't think that the Jeff Swaim experience, even though he's been, the hot hand the last couple of weeks, I don't think that Jeff is substantially better than Michael Pruitt or Anthony Ferkser. I think they all three do different things. And honestly, before Tommy Hudson went on IR, I thought he could have factored into this equation in a bigger way. I thought he did make some nice catches in that what ended up being the loss against the Jets, but he has been on injured reserve, I believe, since then. He took a nasty-looking kidney shot or got hit in the back, if I recall correctly, on the sideline closest to the press box. And, yeah, we haven't seen him since. But, I mean, the tight end production has been better in the last 2 weeks. The tight end position, I think, is pretty fluid. And I think that's okay. Don't get caught up in starters. You know what I'm saying? Adrian Peterson started the game against the Rams because he was physically the first running back out on the field on Sunday. Now, he did end up getting more carries than the other two, but I don't think that's necessarily what it's going to look like from week to week. I don't think that you should look at the tight end position any differently. I think that you can assign the word starter too literally to what you're seeing at certain positions. You know what I'm saying? If they come out there in 3 wide receiver sets, then Chester Rogers in the slot is officially a starter that week, or whomever they have in the slot, right? Some combination of 3 wide receivers. If Marcus Johnson happens to be an outside receiver on their opening formation, then Marcus Johnson is a starter that week. I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about that. We'll get to more of your phone calls. You guys have loaded them up. We'll talk about this Titans defensive line. You'll hear from Greg Cosell of NFL Films on what this Titans defense collectively is doing so well right now. And then Teair Tart, Titans defensive tackle, is going to join us at 11:15. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Titans designated cornerback Christian Fulton to return to practice on Wednesday. He remains on IR and now enters a 21-day period where he can be activated off of injured reserve. The team is back on the practice field today. Also signed Chris Jones, the cornerback, to the active roster from the practice squad on Wednesday. Preds picked up a road win at the Dallas Stars last night, 4-2 the final. Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, each with a goal. They're both up to 5 on the season. At 7-5-1, the Preds remain on the road at the St. Louis Blues. Tonight, it's a 7 p.m. puck drop. College hoops, Vanderbilt season opened with a 91-72 win over Alabama State. Jordan Wright led with 16 points, Scottie Pippen Jr. with 15, and the Tennessee Lady Vols opened up with a 59-49 win over Southern Illinois. Thursday night football tonight is in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. The 2-7 Dolphins hosting the 6-2 Baltimore Ravens. Kickoff is at 7:20. Westwood One coverage right here on The Zone. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
We're already into hour number 2. It must mean that we're having a good show. Welcome in. Buck Reising here with you till 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica making it all happen. Got a quick one here before Titans defensive tackle Teair Tart pops on the line, and we talk about the success that this Titans defensive line has been having and playing a massive role in, if not the biggest role, in why the Titans are winners of 5 of their last 5 consecutive games. Not bad. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We'll go to your phone calls here in just a second because I know a lot of you guys want to weigh in about the defensive line and about re-signing Harold Landry and things of that nature. But I want you to hear some. You heard from Mina, and Mina obviously has been watching the tape of what the Titans are doing well and how they kind of stack up against the rest of the NFL's best defensive fronts. But I want to look at this defense kind of from a 1,000-foot view. And Greg Cosell and myself of NFL Films do a podcast every week. If you didn't know, it's called The Install. Subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a nice rating. Greg feels like an Uber driver every time I pump that out on the podcast, but it's okay. We love Uber drivers too. It's a big part of our audience. No shame in asking for reviews. 5 stars only, though. So Greg and I were talking about the defense yesterday, and I wanted to kind of have him expand on not just the ways that they're getting pressure with 4, but kind of the different 4 that they're sending on any given pressure, whether it's coming from the secondary, the defensive linemen, the linebackers, and this is what Cosell had to say about what the Titans are doing on defense.
Well, I'd say a couple of things, and I think you have to go back to that game against Buffalo on Monday night, which sort of started this 4-game stretch. And they now have a defined, distinct profile on defense, particularly when they're in their nickel and their dime. And they rush 4. This is not a team that blitzes much at all. They tend to play zone when they're in nickel. Okay, and very often they'll get to those zone concepts with disguise and late movement, and they tend to play more man when they're in dime. So that's been their profile, and what has made it so successful is the ability of their front 4 to exert consistent pressure on quarterbacks. And they don't just line up and say, "Here we come." They are so multiple with their stunt concepts. I mean, this is a team that has every form of stunt that you can have. They move people around. They're multiple with their front look, so the stunts come in different ways. And they have been so good with the ability to rush with 4 through stunts that now they can play with 7 in coverage. And that's ideally what every team would like. Because as I know we've spoken on this podcast before, it's always a numbers game. Football is a numbers game, Buck. If you can rush 4 and play coverage with 7, that's a good thing. If you can't rush with 4 and have to start adding people to the rush, that limits your numbers in coverage and therefore limits your options in coverage.
Yeah.
So the fact that they can rush with 4 and generate consistent pressure on quarterbacks, and this is what the last month's template has been, has really allowed their secondary to play better. So players have started to slowly develop. Players like Chris Jackson, who's made a phenomenal play last week in his understanding of how to play a particular coverage when he wheeled away from a route and then went up and made a play on the ball versus Cooper Kupp on the sideline. Really great zone recognition and awareness. So you're seeing players who before the season, we wouldn't necessarily have known what their role was, whether it be Chris Jackson or Elijah Molden, even Chris Jones getting meaningful snaps. Players like that are now able to function effectively because when you can get the kind of pass rush pressure that they've been able to generate, that really helps on the back end.
That's Greg Cosell of NFL Films, the podcast available wherever it is you get your podcast every Wednesday at 6 p.m. in your feed. They're doing it a lot of different ways, and the whole defense is benefiting because of it, just like we talked about with Mina not too long ago. Let's go to Tony in Nashville up first on 104.5 The Zone. Hey, Tony, you're on the air. What are you giggling about?
I'm actually at the Dollar General store right now completing a DoorDash order, and I was actually talking to one of the employees here that was helping me grab an item. So I apologize about that, Buck.
What? No, that's okay. What item? What item are you grabbing?
Well, I'm actually picking up some always ultra thin panty liners right now. So
very good.
I'm grab those on my own. Yeah, so I got some store associate help with that one, so I didn't pick up the wrong thing.
Excellent.
Well, thanks for taking my call, man, and putting me on the spot there. Buck, the more I listen to you, brother, the more I enjoy and appreciate your insight and what you do. I talked to J. Martin Ramon this morning in terms of what they thought and how they got their information from the national media, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about the Titans and specifics on how, when you got started and your insight on how you got your information when you got started. And also wanted to ask you a question on the defense as well in comparison to teams that are playing the Titans. Obviously, when you're playing a team that you know a lot about, I think you can be more prepared for that. But when you're playing a team that's putting in 6, 7, 8, 9 different guys and have not played consistently throughout the season, do you think that that's more difficult for defensive coordinators or offensive coordinators to have to see the multiple amounts of players and not know exactly what that offense or defense is going to do? And if you wouldn't mind keeping me on the line while I'm on the phone here on hold so I can listen to your response, I'd appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, boys.
Thanks, Tony. Go ahead and pop him on hold if you would be so kind, Lucas. So I don't know that anybody wants to hear my life story right now, Tony. Maybe we can talk about that some other time because Teair Tart's about to join us, and I want to answer your question about the defense. I mean, it depends, right? Like, I don't think it's one size fits all analysis. Like, if you're an offensive coordinator going against defensive backs that you haven't seen before and you don't necessarily know what their strengths and weaknesses are unless you've scouted them coming up through the pre-draft process, then yeah, you may play things a little more conservatively than you otherwise would, or you may not test guys in a way that you would after you've seen more film on them. Now, on offense, like, teams are feasting on the Titans because they've played 11 different offensive linemen this year, and that's inherently going to muck things up for you. But so I think it can have beneficial effects, but less so on the offense, because on offense, you're looking for continuity, you're looking for consistency, you're looking for things to kind of build upon each other on a week-to-week basis. And when you don't have your players available that you want to, get your full version of the offense out there, i.e. the Titans to start the season, then it kind of looks clunky the way that it did. I hope that answers your question. We can talk about life stories another time because Teair Tart, Titans defensive tackle, Pop-Tart, as Teron Davenport likes to call him, will join us coming up next. Now, we chose Fresh Prince because Teair Tart, Titans defensive tackle, is a West Philadelphia man himself. Teair Tart's going to join us here in just a second. We'll catch up with him, talk some Titans, and see what he's been experiencing as part of this fantastic defensive front that they're rocking right now. A part of that is not just Teair, but what Jeff Simmons, Danico Autry, Harold Landry, Bud Dupree, what they're all contributing to it. And I know a lot of people have questions about that defensive front. So while we wait for Teair Tart, let's go to Alvin in Nashville up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Yo.
What's up, Alvin?
Hey, I just want to know, Buck, as far as like our salary and stuff, right now we wouldn't be able to re-sign Harold Landry, but during the season when we get that extra money from the NFL and everything, will we be able to re-sign him, or do you think we'll have to franchise him? I'll hang up and listen.
All right, thanks for the call, Alvin. So, I mean, the Harold Landry, and it's early, right? Because he's obviously on a heater, and if he stays healthy and he continues this kind of production, it's entirely possible that Harold Landry could be looking at a contract somewhere between $17 million and $20 million a year. That's what the top of the market makes as far as edge rushers are concerned. Bud Dupree, I think the average annual salary ended up being $16.5 million. So, I mean, it's unclear exactly what he'll be asking for and what the rest of the year will bear out for him. But right now, you can look at market valuations based on what other players are making at the position. It's crazy. Harold Landry is only making $1.6 million this year, and he's about to get a massive pay increase as long as he keeps up on this. But he's projected by Spotrac, Sambrilo, $17.7 million a year in average annual salary. Spotrac is saying that 4 years, $70.8 million would be the projection right now through 9 weeks of play. Again, he's got 6 sacks on the season, and he has been playing very high-level football thus far. Harold Landry has been, a revelation as far as this Titans defense is concerned. So, they can move money around. They can get out from under Taylor Lewan's contract next year. Ryan Tannehill's cap hit goes through the roof. You can find ways to make this work if you want to keep him, but it's going to cost you elsewhere, right? Jeff Simmons is going to be due a contract in fairly short order. A.J. Brown as well. Now, Harold Landry is from the draft class before, so you have a little more breathing room on A.J. and Jeff, but it may not be advantageous to you to let it play out with those two and then have it gouge you at the top of the market if they come through in a contract year like you've seen Corey Davis do, like you've seen Harold Landry do. There's Bud Dupree in a contract year. Like, players understand what's on the line, and whether they want to admit it or not, there's a big part of that factors in. But I would say to you ultimately that, yeah, if you want to keep Harold Landry, you can find ways to keep him. It's just you're going to have to get creative with how you do the math, right? Who's going to be willing to take on that roster a contract extension with voidable years that allows you to be financially flexible? Ryan Tannehill's cap hit's already going to go down because you restructured it to add Julio Jones, and you restructured Julio earlier this season. So, again, when you look at the top of the market, his best statistical comparison is Bud Dupree from last year. And Bud Dupree was the top of the market for pass rush. Well, actually, that was Shaq Barrett, and then Bud Dupree. But those are the comparable assessments when you kind of look at guys who you will be hoping to extend as a fan next season. 615-737-1045 is the number. That's how you jump in on the conversation. We're going to tell you what the Titans need to fix first and foremost on their offense in the noon hour. The coordinators are currently speaking right now, and we'll play some of that audio for you regarding Todd Downing and Shane Bowen, because those dudes are calling games out of their minds at this point. But something that's been pretty interesting that I want to talk about, and I wonder how closely Titans fans are paying attention to. How many people are watching what's happening with Adam Schefter at this point? Now, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, the two preeminent newsbreakers in the NFL right now, Adam Schefter's been under a little bit of fire and had a nationally televised apology yesterday that I found really, really interesting. I bring this up because normally we wouldn't talk so much inside baseball, but we had a caller a couple of weeks ago, right, that got a little flustered because he wanted to know why Adam Schefter is breaking the Derrick Henry news. I guess that was just last Monday, why Adam Schefter is breaking the Derrick Henry news and nobody local is getting it first. And I was probably more dismissive of that than I should be, because I think Jimmy Wyatt, there's nobody who's ever been as good at Jim Wyatt as breaking Titans news. And then the Titans signed away Jimmy's Twitter account to keep it from dunking on them on a regular basis. And now Jimmy works for the team, so he gets stuff internally, but he's limited in what he can report, right? So once Wyatt went away that way, there's not really I don't think among us there's like still a true blue Titans beat writer. I mean, I guess that'd be Teron Davenport, but TD's a little different, right? He does film X's and O's. I'm different in the fact that I'm a full-time sports talk radio show host on top of everything else at this point. So you go through the list and everybody's doing things differently. There's not somebody like Jim Wyatt who was literally exhausting himself. It's a big reason. He did a great podcast with Braden Gull and Steve Cavendish on 440 Sports describing the nature of how things have changed since he, for lack of a better term, crossed the street to in-house media. But what's happening with Schefter right now is Adam Schefter had to go on to national television yesterday and publicly apologize for his initial reporting about Dalvin Cook. Now, we talk about this because Adam Schefter has been the most adamant one out there with Derrick Henry is done for the season. He's doubled down on it several times. And I look at this, and I'm watching Adam Schefter last night, and the initial report from Adam Schefter was that Dalvin Cook, in the middle of a domestic abuse and extortion allegation, had to come on TV last night and say it's a reminder that he needs to slow down. He reported Tuesday night that Zach Hiller, who is the agent of Dalvin Cook, told him that the running back is the victim of domestic abuse and extortion, and tweeted out additional details about the alleged incident from the agent at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So all of this gets very muddied very quickly. And it's easy to look at that and say, well, Chef, it doesn't matter. Like, as a sports fan, I don't know if sports fans care. I think Lucas and I found this interesting. And if we're going off like too into the weeds for you about how the business of sports reporting, and particularly the NFL reporting, works with guys at the level of Schefter, I would invite you to look at the timeline of Robert Klemko, who now writes about sports, formerly from Sports Illustrated, but now for the Washington Post. Klemko goes piece by piece on this Dalvin Cook thing because Adam Schefter has to come out and apologize because he didn't talk to both sides. He went out there with Dalvin Cook as the victim of a domestic abuse witch hunt, for lack of a better term, and didn't talk to the party who Dalvin Cook, there's now pictures of what he is accused of doing to this woman, and it's really, really bad. So Robert Klemko gets out there with basically a how the NFL news sausage is made thread. Dalvin Cook's agent, Zach Hiller, wanted to get in front of a lawsuit filed last night in Minnesota alleging that Dalvin Cook assaulted a former girlfriend, among other accusations. So Hiller went to the person he knew would do absolutely zero digging if presented a scoop, Adam Schefter. The thread goes on, and it lights Schefter on fire in a way that you don't see a lot in sports media. We'll circle back to that conversation after we catch up with Teair Tart, Titans defensive tackle. I just thought that it was a fascinating thing to be following, given the reporting that's being done by Adam Schefter around the Derrick Henry situation. So we'll get into more details on that coming up next. Lucas, what are you shaking your head at me about?
May have to postpone Teair Tart today.
Okay. Well, that's all good.
I think he got pulled into a meeting.
Well, that happens. That's why, and they're practicing indoors today.
Yes.
So we can have the Adam Schefter conversation now, shall we? We'll catch up with Teair Tart later. So Hiller, the agent, went to the person he knew would do absolutely zero digging if presented a scoop, Adam Schefter. That is such an indictment of a person who is considered NFL insider. Adam is not stupid, Robert goes on to say. He probably asked why Hiller wanted this claim out there, and Hiller probably told him that there were accusations coming down the pipe. Schefter went ahead with a fraction of the full story. Why? Because either Dalvin Cook is telling the truth, or Cook and Hiller wanted this story muddied, and they wanted all the usual suspects to line up and run with their version of events, and the usual suspects obliged. There's screenshots of Pro Football Talk aggregating the news. Robert Little at Black Sports Online. You've got Robert Griffin III tweeting out messages of support for Dalvin Cook, who was being painted as the victim and then went into a press conference yesterday and claimed that he was the victim. My point being is I don't think that it's rare to see Adam Schefter on shaky ground. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that we're currently recording the Titans coordinator's press conference, so we'll be able to play you that clip of his apology later on. But it's crazy to me that the summer that Adam Schefter has had, right, where he's publicly feuding with Aaron Rodgers, where Adam Schefter teases a breaking news update in the middle of the NFL draft coverage, day one, with Laura Rutledge and I mean, our friend Mina Kimes, they're all a part of the television broadcast. And he goes basically, hey, Laura, I've got a scoop for you coming up next. Like he did it like I would do a sports radio tease. And I'm like, man, the stones on this guy. Are you kidding me? When you're so confident that you've got one of the biggest stories in the NFL this season, this year, and you're going to tease it going to commercial break? Like, what? So he does that. It's great television. It was great theater. But how much of what, I guess the question I'm asking the audience, do you care how you get your NFL news? And do you care that it seems to, a lot of it, to be performance art? I mean, you've got Adam Schefter under fire in the middle of this whole Washington football investigation about, hey, Mr. Editor, make sure that everything checks out on your end, that he's sending to Bruce Allen, who was at the time the president of the Washington football team.
He's a miracle truther.
Well, that's the biggest indictment among Titans fans of Adam Schefter, right?
Is it that, or that he's the only one that continuously says they will not be getting Derrick Henry back?
Oh, it's for sure the Derrick Henry thing. If he ends up being wrong, now, man, because here's what's interesting to me, and I don't know if people are interested in the inside baseball stuff the way that we are. I'm fascinated by it because I talked about this Monday after the Colts game, right? I got the same call. Well, and I don't know that it was from the same source, right? But I got a call Sunday night in my hotel room as I'm getting ready for prime time. Hey, they think Derrick's done for the year. I'm like, whoa, that's really, really big to be out there and be that strong on it without having the information on the injury. Now, I didn't get what Schefter ended up getting, that it was a broken bone in his foot. But I wasn't willing, just based off what I was being told, to run with the idea that Derrick Henry was going to be done for the year. That's a really, really big story to be out there on shaky ground with. And I wasn't willing to do it. Now, I was able to confirm it after Schefter got it. And if Schefter wants to be out there on that island, I would rather be able to expand the reporting rather than be out there first with something like that doesn't seem like it's trending towards being right. It's early, but again, I mean, you have so many different former NFL athletes. Will Compton was on this show giving as good of medical analysis as I've ever heard about Jones' fractures and the way that they had to put his foot back together as an inside linebacker. Derrick Henry plays a different position, obviously, but it's really curious to see. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got the Mr. Editor thing with Schefter. And again, I have a lot of respect for Adam Schefter's work. I came into the NFL media business at a time where I didn't know what a beat writer was, because newspapers are dying as far as my media consumption is concerned. And I didn't realize that you had local people who are supposed to be breaking this over the national people. That's how I came out of college thinking. It's crazy. Because the first day I'm in the building at St. Thomas Sports Park, they're giving it, like the PR staff's giving the local media a tour of the new, at that time new, I think it was 2016, renovated weight room at St. Thomas Sports Park for us to take dumb pictures of and all this stuff. And meanwhile, Drew Rosenhaus and Jarrell Casey are in another room like 2 doors down signing a contract extension that Adam Schefter has a picture of. And I'm just like, oh, that's what it's like to get dunked on as a local person by Adam Schefter. This isn't the way that it's supposed to be. And all the local people scrambling around. Turns out that's how it's been. But it's because the way that things have skewed now, and again, anybody can get out there and get this stuff if you properly cultivate the sources. It's not easy to do, and that's incumbent upon us. But when you have people who are wanting to shape a narrative, and they know that Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, how many Twitter followers does Adam Schefter have right now? Like, just out of curiosity, just how big a platform does he individually have? 8.7 million. Woo-hoo-hoo. Wow. You want to spread news fast? If you want a narrative out there, you put that in front of somebody who wants a scoop, and you put it on the megaphone.
Rappaport has 2.9, just as a comparison.
8.7 for Schefter. And he's regularly on the worldwide leader in sports, the biggest sports television and media network that exists, ESPN. So you want something out there, you could serve it up on a silver platter. And what Klemko is alleging is that Schefter didn't do his homework. And Adam Schefter admitted to that too. It's interesting. And it's something that's going to be a big part of this Derrick Henry storyline. Let's go to JR in Spring Hill up next on 104.5 The Zone. What's up, JR?
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call. It's funny you bring this topic up because it's something I've wondered for years, but I've never thought about asking. But how do these guys, these national like ESPN, like Schefter, get these sources? They're always the ones to break it. Is it because they're the path of least resistance and they'll just not do any digging and put out the story to create the narrative that the agents or whomever wants out there? Or do they incentivize their sources via monetary or gifts? I mean, I'm curious as to how they actually get every scoop.
So, again, it's I don't want to make excuses for local media, JR, and I appreciate the question because, like, at the end of the day, it's incumbent upon us here who are at practice every day. COVID has made the world different, right? We don't have the relationships that we used to, and everybody's been separated in a way that's really, really hard to get around unless you have these agents on group text, because you'll notice that Rappaport and Schefter get a lot of these scoops at the same time, and they'll tweet them within seconds of each other. And a lot of times they're on, you can be put on a group text with an agency, basically. And so say you're an agent who's negotiated a really good deal from your perspective, and you can make the numbers tell the best story that you want them to tell, and you can put it out on the biggest platform for anybody, for any player who's considering switching agents, for any team who's looking at the structure of the deal and saying, oh, that agent did a pretty good job by not just us, but with the way that they've structured the contract so the player thinks he's getting more money than he's actually getting. When you see Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport cite Drew Rosenhaus, who represents a lot of guys in the league, they're getting that information directly from, and they're saying, per Drew Rosenhaus, player X's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, these are the terms of the deal. And the deal looks great, right? Because the agent is giving them the terms of the deal because that's the most favorable look on the agent. Now, what happened here with Schefter, and Lucas, let me know when we're able to play that, because I think to hear it in Schefter's own words, really gives it a lot more impact. It's pretty shocking to see him these last couple of weeks be on the ropes the way that he is. And again, I don't want this to sound like, I'm out here playing gotcha journalism on Adam Schefter. I'm not trying to do that at all. I would be miserable if I was in his position. I can't imagine what that's like. It has to be really deeply uncomfortable, even as he's been doing this at a high level for a long time with a lot of eyeballs on him. The difference is that these issues have become, transparent, not by his own doing, to where it looks like it has more journalistic integrity than it actually has. So I'm not trying to play gotcha with Adam Schefter. I'm just, I'm peeling back the layers on this thing because now I'm curious about Derrick Henry. You know what I'm saying? Like, who wants it out there so definitively that Derrick Henry may be done for the year? Because I think there's some mind game stuff going on in a way that is below the surface based on what the rumblings have started to be, because people are starting to question the reporting now. And you never used to do that with Schefter. Maybe you still don't. Maybe you're just happy to see it first on your timeline and move on. But, I mean, the agents go directly to the network guys because the network guys have the biggest reach and can tell the best story in favor of the client or in favor of the agent. And it's unfortunate that that's how things work now. It's not an excuse. It's just kind of the reality of the situation if you're in the business of breaking news. It's tough to do. It's really tough to do. And if Schefter is covering 32 teams and he wants to make his life a little easier and an agent is willing to serve him up a scoop on what is a headline-worthy story that Dalvin Cook is getting ready to be embattled in a domestic violence allegation, that'll get noticed. That'll get headlines. That'll lead SportsCenter. And so if somebody's going to just serve it up to Schefter, I mean, if he slips up once and takes the easy path, then this is what it looks like. And then it makes you wonder how much you can trust, how often or how regularly he's done something like that. 615-737-1045 is the number. When we come back, we'll talk more about this situation, and we'll let you hear from Todd Downing and Shane Bowen, Titans offensive and defensive coordinator, who have been at the podium for the last couple minutes. Some interesting stuff about what the Titans are doing defensively and how Todd Downing is trying to adapt still to life without Derrick Henry. We'll do that on the other side. Your phone calls as well. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. I don't know that we mentioned this, but Cam Newton's back in Carolina. That's official. I think we said something about that. Time is a flat circle, I believe, is the joke that I made. But either way, Cam Newton, who was in Nashville hanging out at the Green Hills Mall, he was at TSU's homecoming, now back with the team that he started his career with.
You think they take a step forward or step back on offense?
I mean,
Harder to go much more backwards.
Sam Darnold's really bad. Yeah, really, really bad. I will say push. Can I be a coward and just say push? I don't think they're going to be better. I don't think they're going to be worse. I just think they're going to be meh. And maybe they'll win some games that they shouldn't because their defense is pretty spectacular.
And Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, but he's been in and out all year long.
Yeah,
he makes a difference, obviously.
He missed quite a stretch there and made his reemergence last week.
So the Christian McCaffrey element is interesting. Anyway, Todd Downing and Shane Bowen just finished talking to the media, and I looked at some of the stuff that they're saying at the press conferences, and we spent a lot of time talking about the development of the Titans' defensive backs and really, how the pressure that they're bringing has allowed them to play at a higher level, right? To develop more within the scheme in real live game reps rather than just being thrown out into the fire the way that it felt like 2020 was going for them and the fact that they were having to cover for an eternity. So Shane Bowen was asked a question about, basically improvisation on defense within a play. Because if you've paid attention to anything that Kevin Byard has said about his interception, his first career pick six, which I was surprised that it was his first career pick six, as a pro anyway.
23 overall in his first career pick six.
He's been pretty good.
That's a high number, 23.
What, interceptions?
Yeah, career?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, listen, last year looks more and more every week like Kevin Byard having to do too much to cover everything up. And I was loud wrong on that because I thought he looked terrible. And it's very much not his fault, or at least not entirely his fault. Anyway, professional initiative is how Shane Bowen is describing defensive improvisation within a play. And sometimes that leads to game-changing plays like Kevin Byard's pick six.
What is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think certain guys you probably trust a little bit more, and they probably got a little bit more leeway, right? Guys that potentially aren't as locked in, who might have some mental errors and do some different things that hurt you at times, like you're going to make sure they're doing exactly how it's coached. But guys that kind of understand the scheme, kind of have that 300 level understanding of the game, right? There's going to be chances there where they're going to take advantage of, right? To go make a play and be opportunistic for our defense. And at the same time, like if we get burnt, we're going to be on his butt in the meeting about it, right? But I mean, I think there's a little bit of professional initiative for those types of players to be able to go out and make some plays and not be robots out there.
Is that a comfort level that may not have been there last year?
Yes and no. I mean, I think last year there was a lot of stuff going on and a lot of moving pieces, and I think now we're into kind of a rhythm a little bit right now with where we're at as a unit. So I think that does play a part. So comfort probably is a good word for it.
That is interesting, right? Because I know that Clowney was freelancing last year in the defense and that it often led to those bad plays that Shane Bowen is saying, yeah, we're going to be on their butts in the meeting room about it if they botch it. But when it's due to tape study and not just, you think that you're going to win one-on-one and you're, player X who can do as you like within the defense, if you're actually identifying correctly the tendency that you think you're seeing from the offense across from you, yeah, professional initiative is kind of a responsibility that they bestow on these guys. To where if Kevin Byard sees that formation, that check that Stafford is getting into before he comes out quick game with it, then he can very quickly tell Jackrabbit Jenkins, hey, lay out here. Don't press up. Let me swoop underneath as what they call the robber, and let me make a play on the ball because it's going to be there. This is exactly what they're doing. We've seen them do it on film time and time again, and he was 1,000% correct took it back for a touchdown to the house. Kevin Byard's first career pick six. So that defensive professional initiative, I think, is interesting. And, you know, how much they're doing. I think the biggest part, because when Shane Bowen's asked about what was different or whether that trust and confidence in the ability to improvise that way was there with the defense last year, I think it's a big part of the fact that the rush is legitimately coordinated. Like, it's not just dudes flying off of the line of scrimmage trying to take down the quarterback. It's choreographed, for lack of a better term, right? Where you see the way that Danico Autry is setting the pick for Harold Landry to come around as the looper and make a play after the defense has occupied itself with Danico Autry on that stunt. You see the same thing with the way that they run those kind of games with Danico Autry and Jeff Simmons up front, and how Simmons and Autry are able to feast off that kind of attention that those games attract, and how it works to the advantage of the defense when you're scheming those things specifically for what a quarterback's tendencies as far as movement in the pocket are. It's so much better looking when those things are choreographed properly, as opposed to, hey, just get out there and make a play. J.J. Watt's been guilty of that throughout times in his career, improvising and doing what he thinks is necessary to make a play, but putting linebackers behind him or the secondary in a bad position because he improvises too much. It's ultimately something, I think when you look at the differences between the 2020 defense under Shane Bowen and now this, outside of the fact that it's his dedicated job to be the defensive coordinator, turns out that very much helps. For the Titans right now, that coordination, that choreographing of pass rush seems to have made all the difference in the world. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. I think it's interesting to see, given the quarterbacks that they're going to face in the next couple of weeks. I mean, do we know? I assume it's going to be Trevor Siemian on Sunday, right?
I don't think we know for sure.
He was really
whether or not it's going to be Taysom Hill.
He was bad, Siemian. He had one good game to take down Tom Brady because, of course, football.
And that was coming in after Jameis Winston had gotten carted off.
It's very odd the way that things fluctuate in this league. So whether it's, I mean, Vrabel said yesterday they have to be prepared for both Siemian and Taysom Hill. And, of course, Siemian spent some time here with the Titans and couldn't even beat out Logan Woodside. That sounded really rude towards Logan Woodside, didn't it? Like that sounded like I was just taking Logan Woodside out. I'm sorry, Logan.
Siemian is a Logan Woodside victim.
Oh, yeah. No, there's like Myles Garrett with the graveyard of quarterbacks.
Woodside got
Woodside's
graveyard.
Logan Woodside's got a long list.
Oh, missed opportunity on Halloween for Woodside. Can you imagine if he showed up to practice? Matt Barkley's still on the team at that point. Barkley's name on his cape.
I'm a reporter, all right? I don't have favorite, because I get that question a lot. Who's your favorite Titans player? I don't have a favorite Titans player. But if Logan Woodside would have done that, created a quarterback graveyard to all the guys he's killed off and trying to take his job, he would have been my favorite player. Quarterback one, QB one, hands down.
Long list.
Long list. Suck it, Deshaun Kaiser, as he's snickering to himself and putting a little fake headstone. Oh, my God. I want that to be so real. It's unfortunate. Not everybody has our sense of humor. When we come back, you'll hear from Todd Downing, and we'll talk about the offense and the one thing that absolutely must be corrected if the Titans are going to play a good game against the Saints. The Titans offense is going to play a good game against the Saints on Sunday here in Nashville. You don't have to worry about the defense, but the offense got some questions right now. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Final hour. It's already upon us. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you for just about 57 more minutes. Fun show so far. We got a little more Titans content to bring your way. A lot more to talk about before two big games in the state of Tennessee this weekend. Vols hosting number 1 Georgia. We'll get into that with King John Reed at greater length tomorrow. But in the meantime, we got to talk about what the Titans offense can do to kind of fix the problems that they were having. Now, when you look at things coming out of the Rams game, you understand they were without 2 of their top 5 offensive linemen. You understand the offensive line's been a risky proposition all year long, kind of. I thought that Bobby Hart was, respectfully terrible. We asked what the one thing the Titans offense, and this is the question that we're asking you as callers, 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045. What's the one thing you got to see them fix on offense this Sunday in their first game without Derrick Henry? 615-737-1045. What's jumping out to you the most that needs to be corrected? So, you're going through all the reasons why they should have looked clunky and did look clunky against the Rams on Sunday night. On offense, again, the defense did not outright win them the game. The offense did well to score three red zone trips, 3 touchdowns. That is a sign of a good team and a well-coordinated team, a team that's executing where you expect them to, if not able to move the ball down the field efficiently, because that's where they struggled. But without Taylor Lewan and Nate Davis, with going against Aaron Donald and a really good Rams front, an aggressive Rams front, having Jalen Ramsey in coverage on A.J. Brown and causing frustrations in coverage and against the quarterback, as Jalen Ramsey often does, you're peeling back the layers. You're saying, all right, no Derrick, injured offensive line. You're looking at a variety of different things and saying, all right, it's understandable. But you can't necessarily – I don't think they should want to or be okay with living that way. Now, I don't think they are. But there's a lot of different layers to this thing. So Todd Downing, who just met with the media at the podium at St. Thomas Sports Park, he's got a lot of things that he's trying to figure out on offense. He's got it. Julio Jones, by the way, the biggest thing from the injury report yesterday to me, we haven't talked about this at all. Julio Jones in Week 10 is not on the injury report. Ooh, that's huge, kids. Christian Fulton being designated to return to practice, not yet active. Chris Jones was signed to the active roster yesterday. Defensive back, played some good snaps for Tennessee the last couple of weeks. So I think the Christian Fulton wait is going to be a little longer. But Julio Jones not being on the injury report at all into Week 10 of the NFL season, with the stretch of games that you have upcoming and then the postseason looming large, as you need to survive this stretch without Derrick Henry, however long it lasts, that's big stuff. So you're looking better as far as health is concerned, trending that way. But there's one position that continues to be bothered. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. And that position is something that John Glennon of Sports Illustrated asked Todd Downing about as they concluded their media availability with the Titans OC today.
I think you need to make natural adjustments there, and understand some of the matchups that you're dealing with. But I would say that falls more on my responsibility, to make sure that I'm giving answers there and trying to make adjustments if we notice where they maybe are moving a defender or, playing them different than an alignment that we saw on tape. And you're going to deal with that throughout the course of every game. It may not be because there's not a starter in there. It may be because, somebody on the other side of the ball is having a hot game, So, we make those adjustments throughout the course of the season, and, Sunday night was no different.
He's talking about the offensive line that objectively was poor across the board. Now, again, Aaron Donald's going to do that to you. Aaron Donald's going to win some matchups. Leonard Floyd's playing pretty good football right now, too. But Bobby Hart at left tackle was, objectively awful. And he hasn't played a ton of left tackle in his career, and Taylor Lewan, the situation. You'll hear from Taylor in the segment coming up next. But the offensive line is in tatters. And they can't, you can't even blame them for not looking good because they can't spend any time together healthy on the field. I'm not mad at them because they can't stay upright, but it's a big issue. The running game left a lot to be desired on Sunday in L.A. against a defense that's not good against the run. For all the good things that Aaron Donald does, they have been susceptible to good running backs this year. They kind of got off the hook without Derrick Henry. That could have been a much bigger blowout. So until you get the offensive line corrected, I don't know that the issues that you're seeing right now are going to go away. But it's got to be a cleaner game than they played on Sunday because the offense capitalized on short fields, excelled in the red zone, but when it came to the offense needing to carry their weight, it was a much more difficult proposition, and the offensive line being the biggest issue among them. 615-737-1045. What's the one thing you need the Titans offense to correct before they play a great Saints defense on Sunday? Ramo in Nashville is up next.
Buck, you hear me?
I got you.
First time caller. Hey, Buck. My thing is with our offense, man. With Ryan Tannehill, I root for the guy. I'm a huge Giants fan. Obviously, I'm behind him. But I want, for once, whether it's in the playoffs in a big game, when shit hits the fan, I want to see.
Yeah, we can't have that. You can't cuss on the air. Sorry, bud. First time caller, and you blew it. Lucas, it's been a while. You had to wake you up a little bit.
Got it though.
I got my nuclear option button in here.
Yeah, we doubled down on that.
Oh
one.
yeah, we both looked at each other like, oh, we visually said it. You can't cuss on the air. Do better. 615-737-1045. We'll see if the rest of the callers can't redeem themselves coming up next. And if we can talk about this without profanity, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone. Are you tired of living with chronic pain, knee pain, or joint pain? Listen carefully, because now there are new treatments available. Not talking surgery or steroids. These are regenerative treatments from the medical professionals at QC Kinetics. Hi, this is Buck Reising. QC Kinetics is the leader in these exciting biologic therapies that help restore and repair damaged tissue in your joints. The best part is the results are long-lasting. If you've got pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back, joint pain that won't go away, you need to check out these new treatments with astonishing patient satisfaction reports. They can actually help your body restore and repair itself with no downtime, no drugs, and no surgery. Call now to schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics. That's 615-249-4024, 615-249-4024. Welcome back. Hey, you guys are going to want to, I mean, not that you wouldn't stick around anyway, but we're going to have a prize for you at the end of this segment. So make sure you're listening, and I'll tell you as we get closer to the end of this segment, how you can win Titans tickets to Titans Saints on Sunday. I'm not going to tell you yet. I'll tell you soon. It's a tease, like Adam Schefter and Aaron Rodgers news. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. We're talking about the Titans offense and what they need to accomplish, how they need to better themselves against the New Orleans Saints, because the situation without Derek is one thing, but it was just objectively a poorly, I mean, poor in what sense, right? Red zone efficiency, red zone execution, they were great. They were 3 of 3. Credit to them. The Titans offense and special teams, we can't leave our beloved Randy out of this conversation. They did what they needed to do when they capitalized on the opportunities, the short fields that the defenses presented to them. But obviously everything else was a slog. The running game was just not there. It was not there to be had. I know Adrian Peterson scored his 125th rushing touchdown, but if all of your touchdowns are coming from 1 yard away, I mean, not to diminish them, they still count for the same amount of points. But still, like, you can't live the way that the Titans were living on Sunday unless you're getting outrageous performances from your defense like they have been. And it's been about a month, so maybe you can rely on it that way. But where do the Titans offense needs to improve first and foremost? It's got to be with the offensive line. Now, Taylor Lewan was asked about whether he believed himself to be indispensable to this team, because obviously Taylor missed the start and Bobby Hart started at left tackle, basically as close to a game-time decision as humanly possible. Mike Vrabel told us after the fact that Taylor was simply unavailable and was there in an emergency capacity. The last time that we were told that, Bud Dupree dressed out, went through pregame warmups, and didn't play a snap in week 3, I believe it was, against the Indianapolis Colts. So 2 guys dealing with ACL recovery, rehab situations, lingering knee issues for Taylor last week during practice, questionable on the injury report, goes through pregame warmups. They decide, nah, it ain't worth it. So they throw Bobby Hart out there and immediately 6 pressures and 2 sacks. It's really tough. So I don't know that Taylor's indispensable. And it doesn't sound like, based on this clip from Titans practice today, that Taylor Lewan believes himself to be indispensable either.
Do you consider yourself an indispensable part of this team right now?
I don't think anybody's indispensable in this team. I think, looking back in 2014, 15, 16, look at the cast of characters we had on this team. We didn't have the names or the players we do now. I think that says a lot about John Robinson and what he's done since he's come in here. Mike Vrabel, the way he's coached, Todd Downing's ability to transition with a new left tackle in the game late. I know my value on this team, and these guys know my value. This coaching staff and the upstairs guys know the value. But I need to be out in the field. I can't miss 2 games because of a knee. And so I understand that. As far as being can they get rid of me? They can get rid of me whenever they want. They could have got rid of me, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I'm really happy that this team's able to function when I'm not in the game. I mean, that would be a heartbreaker if I wasn't able to play because of a left tackle we didn't win the game. That says a lot about. It says a lot about the players. But I'm a left tackle. I'm not a quarterback. I'm not. I don't want to overvalue my position. You know what I'm saying? Like, left tackle is a very key part of this team, but at the same time, I'm not dishing the ball to the boys. Ryan Tannehill, the way he's commanded this team says a lot about him and where he's taking this program.
So there's obviously a lot happening in the background. That's Big Jeff as the background music, basically, to Taylor Lewan. That audio courtesy of Paul Kaharski. You're hearing Taylor describe, does he believe himself to be indispensable? And he correctly says nobody's indispensable except, and again, I'm not attacking Bobby Hart personally, but Bobby Hart is not anywhere close to what Taylor Lewan can give you, even when Taylor's playing at a diminished level. It's just not the case. 615-737-1045. What does the Titans offense have to correct before they play the Saints on Sunday? Because that defense is absolutely going to try and take advantage of them the same way that the Rams did. And with a fair amount of success, Titans defense was incredibly critical to that win in L.A. on Sunday night. Let's go to Colt in Chapel Hill up next on 104.5 The Zone.
What's up? You got me?
I sure do.
My biggest thing, I guess, would have to be consistency in the offense. I don't think we win that game against Los Angeles last week, or it wasn't for our defense taking up. We've already had Tannehill throw 2 or 3 picks in the last 3 games. I don't know how we're winning with that.
Well, hang on, Cole. What define consistency in what for me? Like, give me something a little more specific. You know what I'm saying?
So, I mean, I think we're just a little bit more hit or miss every game. It's either A.J. Brown's making spectacular plays, hitting his catches, or A.J. Brown's dropping the wide-open ball on their sideline, or Tannehill's getting good reads and throwing the ball well, or he's throwing a pick straight to their defense.
All right, so let me, because I feel like I've addressed this earlier in the week, and 615-737-1045 is the number, 615-737-1045. The Tannehill pick, I'm not mad at Ryan Tannehill about the pick. Like, at least that Rams pick. I'm not. And really, after he explained the first one against the Colts, the second one was just bad. That I can't remember number 97 for the Colts name, but I think he tore his Achilles on that play because he took off, tried to run with the ball. He got the interception and then ended up fumbling it. It's a weird sequence in Indianapolis on Halloween. But Tannehill, if you watch on film, and listen, I'll talk about A.J. Brown's consistency catching the football because that has been a question this season. That's a legitimate question. But watch that Tannehill interception again and watch A'Shawn Robinson's arm as the Rams defensive lineman, as it comes literally as Tannehill is getting ready to release that ball in front of Tannehill's face. So he doesn't see Jalen Ramsey breaking on the ball because A'Shawn Robinson's tree trunk of an arm is in front of his head. So Tannehill described that play to us after the game. We asked him, and he goes, "Yeah, I basically tried to curve it around A'Shawn, so I didn't get the pass swatted, and then I didn't see Jalen Ramsey breaking on the ball at the time that I did, and it was too late at that point." Like, that's a completely explainable interception. It doesn't make it any less hurtful because it did bog them down to a degree. And if I recall correctly, the Rams scored their first points off of that interception. It was a field goal because, again, the Titans defense was playing really, really well. That's just one of those, yeah, it happens. You have to look at each interception individually rather than saying that Ryan Tannehill is turnover prone at this point. Now, he has thrown more interceptions to this point in the season than he did all of last year. That's a legitimate issue, right? Turnover differential is how you lose football games if you're on the wrong side of things. But I'm not worried about Ryan Tannehill. Now, the A.J. Brown thing, I don't know what to make of that because I watched Jalen Ramsey against him, and you heard A.J. basically say, yeah, he got me a couple of times during that game. And that was how the first game that those two played against each other, 2019, A.J.'s rookie year in Jacksonville Thursday night. That's how that first matchup went. Now, A.J., I mean, he caught, 5 of his 11 targets? Like, they were struggling. They were struggling to figure that out. And the way that he's making these drops, it's pretty interesting because I don't want to say that they're routine because you're throwing these guys open, and Tannehill's throwing him open. He's just not making the catches that you would consider to be layups. He'll come up with some critical third down conversions. He'll come up, and he's coming off a game, or at least he was coming off a game before Sunday night against the Colts where he was a monster, right? He was the Terminator. He's 155 receiving yards and a 57-yard touchdown. Like A.J. Brown was fine 2 weeks ago, and then he has this game against the Rams where you're like, all right, the hell. He's playing against one of the most premier, if not the premier corner in football right now and struggled, to be frank. And when he struggled, you had the option of Julio Jones, who you targeted in the second half and who you completed 4 of 4 passes to for 35 yards. Tough catches, by the way. Julio made great plays, even if the stats don't jump off the sheet in front of you. I'm looking at the Saints defense. They got 13 turnovers on the season, right? And they're bothering quarterbacks almost as much as the Titans are. It's the Rams 1, the Titans 2. Saints are right up there in the top 5 as far as pressures on the quarterback. Cam Jordan's been doing it forever. It's an insane. It's one of my favorite tweets from a professional athlete is that when not Donovan McNabb, I think it's Donovan Smith is the left tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He signed an extension, and all you see from Cam Jordan's Twitter account is tweeting at another Saints defensive lineman like we're about to eat. You kidding me? That's so disrespectful. You know what? He's right. He's a monster. Demario Davis, Mike Vrabel was talking about the kind of respect that he has for Demario Davis, the Saints linebacker, yesterday in our media availability with him. And I look at the way that they're creating the turnovers and the kind of defense they like to play. And it's going to change if C.J. Gardner-Johnson doesn't play, their safety. He's dealing with a toe issue right now. Also, Alvin Kamara's day-to-day.
Yeah, he's in question right now.
He's not in question for the season. I watched I read a couple Saints beat writers yesterday because I saw that news pop up once we got the injury report at 3:00. But I think that is a bit, especially if you're trying to get Jayon Brown and David Long, some easy wins, to not have to cover Alvin Kamara is a huge one out of the backfield. He's basically a wide receiver, and they have no receiving options left. They're playing with Lucas and I at wide receiver. And Marquez Callaway. Me, Lucas, and Marquez Callaway out there routing them up.
And potentially Odell Beckham Jr.
Oh, my God.
But not by Sunday.
Can we not?
Most recently, I think Diana reported that he's going to wait for this next slate of games anyway.
Do you understand that I got so upset with the amount of Odell Beckham Jr. that we talked yesterday? Like, I felt dirty. Have you ever watched The Newsroom on HBO?
No, I heard it's fantastic.
It's superb. And it's broadcast journalism. It's politics and civil government and what's actually news versus, covering the weather on the nightly news and things like that, like what's actual reporting. And the whole thesis of the show is the mission to civilize. We're not going to talk down to the audience. We're not going to pander to them. We're not gonna give them the red meat that they want just for the sake of giving them the red meat. We're not gonna sell out for ratings. You know what I did yesterday? I sold out so hard. It was gross. I felt like I needed a shower with the amount of just dumb Odell Beckham talk that we did yesterday. Because I knew people wanted to talk about it. It's a finable offense, frankly. And the fines around the radio show, I haven't been fined in a while. I'm going to pay a substantial amount to Home Street Home for my transgressions because I gave up on the mission to civilize yesterday, and I saw how many people wanted to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. My mission to civilize was Rick Barnes and Kennedy Chandler and their percentage from three. I'm like, sports. And then all anybody wants to do is Odell. It was gross.
Well, he's going to drag it on, too.
No team needs him more, right? Like, in all seriousness.
Than the Saints? Oh, yeah. It's not close.
New England. New England's skill position players still suck. Like, they're not very good. Imagine taking N'Keal Harry over A.J. Brown if you're the Patriots. Like, Bill Belichick, what the hell, man? Didn't Hollywood Brown go over A.J. Brown, too? A.J. Brown, the second Brown taken in that draft? Trash. Just trash. This is why I laugh every time that we talk about John Robinson's record in the draft. I'm like, look at what everybody else is doing. Bill Belichick is just malpractice when it comes to talent evaluation, particularly at the skill positions. Anyway, this is V-Love tweets us, you pandered to the crowd and we got the dumbest callers as a result. Never again. It was, listen, I love our people, V-Love. I love you too. It's deeply uncomfortable with how much love goes around on this show. But I did. I sold out. And we didn't do the dumbest thing in sports of it as a result. Because my dumbest thing in sports was Odell Beckham Jr. And then I did exactly what I was accusing.
Yeah, then for 45 minutes we talked about Odell Beckham Jr.
God. We'll be better next time. It's my promise to you.
By the way, you brought up Cam Jordan and talking about consistency. Yeah. I just pulled it up. He's had 7.5 sacks at minimum every single season since 2012.
I mean, he's so good. He's so good. Like, and he's not, he's long. He's got great length, and this is something that you're seeing from Jeff Simmons right now. And it's something, and I know we couldn't find the audio, but Roger Saffold. Roger, I asked him a question about, working against Jeff in practice, because obviously Roger was with the Rams before coming to the Titans. Aaron Donald was on the team when they were in St. Louis and then ultimately moving to L.A. What Roger was talking about is, we work against one another. And Taylor Lewan's talked about this with Harold Landry too. They workshop each other's technical skills in terms of hand fighting as an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, the different techniques that you use. How many different techniques Jeff Simmons has developed since working against Roger Saffold and Ben Jones and Nate Davis on a regular basis in practice. Not full tilt, but you understand, all right, you're leaning into your block this way, so the way that I'm going to pull you down by your shoulder pads is I'm going to take you out of the play by yanking you in the direction that you're already doing if you're putting too much weight into your block. You know what I'm saying? Like using those different hand fighting motions. I haven't seen anybody better at it. And it's why pass rushers are lasting a lot longer than they used to. Guys like, Terrell Suggs was just in the league last year. I'm pretty sure he was a Cardinal for a hot second last year. Cardinals legend Terrell Suggs. Or you've got Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis lasting until the very end. Because not only have the rules changed things for the viability of the quarterback, but they've made things a lot easier on edge rushers too if you can be technically sound. Justin Houston is another great example of this. Nobody's done it better than Cam Jordan, though, at a consistently high level. Saints defense has 13 takeaways on the year, and your quarterback is giving it up, whether you want to take the interceptions piece by piece and look at them individually, or you want to be cognizant of the fact that that the turnovers are just happening at a higher rate. Now, the Titans defense has 11 takeaways in the last 5 games. They're +6 in this stretch after starting the season -6 with all the strip sacks that were happening. Again, a product of the offensive line struggles. Against the Saints defense, to combat it, you would have to find ways to keep the pass rush honest, and you would have to find ways to do that with a higher rate of efficiency in the running game. I don't know why I'm trying to figure out why they used Adrian Peterson as much as they did last week. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand what the advantage of that was, other than he's Adrian Peterson. But the efficiency, the way that he's jumping around in the hole and he's not quite hitting it the way that you need him to. And again, the offensive line situation, not good. The Saints, the thing that the Saints have up front is just physical size. Aaron Brewer, for as much as you like his effort and his finish, he is going to be physically overmatched by what the Saints have on the interior and what Cam Jordan is able to do to your tackles. It cannot be Bobby Hart out there on Sunday. And Taylor Lewan knows that, and we'll see whether he's able to physically give it a go against the Saints. 615-737-1045 is the number. I think what I'm looking for is for them to establish, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a new identity. I don't think it needs to be a massive diversion from what makes them good right now. I just think that in that first game, as they're feeling things out, as they're taking some jabs, they're trying to hit some body blows, they're trying to figure out what they can do that still works the same way that you want it to. I don't think that the running game, again, the running game does not need to be abandoned, but I think that the approach needs to be different. And I'm going to continue to stump for Deontay Foreman until such time as they give him a greater percentage of carries, because I can't help but be convinced that that's the right move. Let's go to Luke in Hendersonville up next on 104.5 The Zone. What's up, Luke?
Hey, I know that, we wanted better production out of Adrian Peterson, but, if you, remember early on with Henry, guys like that, you have to give them a lot of touches, and it's the first game. And, a lot of times with all these fourth quarter wins, the reason they win is they stick to the game plan, and I know he's not Henry. He's not going to wear down the defenses like Adrian Peterson does, but, they were the best defense in the league probably, and they weren't going to just stop handing the ball. And I agree. I think going forward, they need to get Foreman more touches. But I think they had a game plan and they wanted to stick with it, and with the turnovers and scoring points that way, they wanted to just see where it went, and they just kept with Adrian Peterson. And I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Luke. And listen, I think that was probably, if you're looking at going back and look at the Cardinals game, right? Because this is Todd Downing week-by-week evolution, and you heard Mina Kimes talk about it early in the show. She thinks he's been up and down as a play caller. And one of the downs was against the Cardinals, right, where they abandoned the run in a way we haven't seen them do since pre-Arthur Smith. And really pre-Terry Robisky, because exotic smash mouth was a thing to their detriment. It's just one of the dumbest quotes I've ever gotten from a coach is when Terry Robisky tells us that 80% of the Titans' offense is derived off Marcus Mariota's ability to run the football. We're just all looking around at each other like, what the hell did he just say? Weather outside, by the way, looks nasty if you're driving around. Be careful. But I'm glad. Here's what I'll say. I agree with you that they didn't abandon the game plan, because Todd Downing did abandon the game plan against Arizona, and you saw things spiral as a result, right? But, and they didn't say that there was any kind of set number of carries that they were going into that game with to get these guys. Jeremy McNichols, by the way, 25 snaps. He played the vast majority of the Titans' offensive plays, 45% to Adrian Peterson's 32%. Deontay Foreman, with 12 snaps, was on the field for 21% of the Titans' offensive plays. So I think that, again, you could see that fluctuate. They could see things on film that they don't like the same way that I saw things in real time and then watching it back that I didn't like. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why the Titans' offensive running game struggled because, again, the offensive line is in not a good way right now. But I just think that you need to find against the Saints and against the Steelers and really against the Patriots, right? These are 3 tough games. I don't care that Mac Jones doesn't look special. I don't care that Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback. I care that the defense is going to cause an offense that is looking to find its footing again. It's going to cause them problems. If you can score the offense down, there's only so much the defense that can do. You can't rely on the defense to create those short fields on a week-to-week basis as they're doing. You can rely on that pressure. The pressure is something that you can count on a regular basis, it seems. But the turnovers, 11 takeaways in the last 5 games. It's good defense. It's smart game planning and film study. But it's going to be tough to sustain that, as we've seen from the start of the season. Let's go to Mike in Nashville up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Buck, what's up, man? Second-time caller.
Love it.
Hey, I really think what the offense needs to do is just make things easier on Tannehill by just using the pass game as part of the run game, kind of what Pittsburgh's been doing since, Big Ben is kind of broke down right now. And I just think putting less on his shoulders since Derrick Henry's gone and you got pretty much 2 new running backs that don't really just know what they're doing quite yet. I just think it'll be helpful to just make it easier on him to have to do less and just use the pass game as part of the run game. And I think that'll just help things out.
Yeah, and again, I think that Julio played a big part in that, right? When they couldn't get AJ to come up with these catches consistently, when Jalen Ramsey was doing Jalen Ramsey things, they went to Julio and they made plays. Listen, Tannehill's making the plays that you absolutely have to have. When we talk about it, and we'll have a conversation, I'm sure later on as the postseason looms about, how good does your quarterback have to be to help you advance far in the playoffs? And Tannehill really only has to do so much. It's the fact that he makes these clutch plays and that they come up with these important drives. And when you're trailing in games, the way that they're able to find ways to come back, nobody does it better. Literally nobody does it better than Tannehill right now in the league. All right. We've talked about this long enough. We've talked a lot about the Titans, and I want to give you the opportunity to go to a Titans game on Sunday, shall I? If you are caller number 5 right now, Lucas and we will give you a pair of Titans tickets now that it's Titans tickets Thursday, where each Thursday, before home games, you have a chance to win a pair of tickets to see the Tennessee Titans face off against their remaining 2021 home opponents at Nissan Stadium. This, of course, is thanks to Kentucky legend. If you're calling number 5 right now, we will give you a chance to win tickets to the Titans versus the Saints. Call 615-737-1045, 615-737-1045 for more info on Titans Ticket Tuesday, presented by Kentucky Legend. Visit 1045thezone.com. Polls next. Ooh, okay. I like that on a rainy Thursday here in Music City.
For whatever reason, this has been stuck in my head all day.
I think it's appropriate. Now, there's always love around here. In fact, we have entirely too much love. It makes me uncomfortable, the amount of love that we profess. And know that when I say this, particularly to loyal listeners or viewers, if you're watching on Zone TV like Brandon Rushing, I do love you, but I do question some of your all's intelligence sometimes. I'm reading. We gave away Titans tickets last segment. We'll do it next Thursday, too. Everybody settle down. Now, what I'll tell you is if you don't get it on the first try, calling 10 more times isn't going to help you. It's just going to make Lucas hate you.
Well, I've blocked off the phones by now. 5:15 later this afternoon, 3HL. We'll do it again.
Oh, very good. All four shows do it, right? Or is it just the three?
3 times a day.
Okay, very good. So if you don't get it on the first try, you're not going to get it. All right. I love you guys, but don't kill yourselves like that. It's just calling 17 times is not going to be an effective strategy. Now, what Brandon Rushing has done is the height of comedy. I called from 2 phones and typed the wrong number in both. Sigh. Brandon, baby.
Respect the hustle.
What is you doing? That's so bad. Now, it doesn't help you that there's a 1 number difference between us and another call-in line. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just 1 number. So if you end up elsewhere, that's pretty funny too. Lebowski says, I'm still calling and will well into the afternoon. Well, he's got nothing better to do. Neither do we. Let's do some polls.
Stop the count. Stop the count. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show correspondent, Lucas Polzika.
Should the words happy hunting strike fear into the heart of Mac Jones? 66% say yes, 34% say no, and Josh says it shouldn't because the league will protect him.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting, right? And we'll find out. They play Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett has a history of hating quarterbacks.
Is this the first time a bounty has essentially been put out on the head of a quarterback?
Since the Saints.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's topical.
Hello, Greg Williams.
Who is the best front seven in the NFL? Steelers, Titans, Saints, or other? 79% of your Titans audience say Titans. 12% say Steelers. 7% say Saints. Dawson says the Bucks.
I'll say the Steelers. I think front seven, I think there's still some stuff to be designed. I think David Long's playing good football right now, but like if you're taking the sum of the parts, I think the Steelers are so good. I mean, the Steelers are so good. Ben Roethlisberger looked a lot better in that late drive to beat the Bears on Monday night, but he's still a liability at this point. That defense, though, it's being wasted if they don't find higher level quarterback play out of Big Ben, because I don't just think, the numbers bear this out. Steelers defense is the best front seven in the sport.
One thing the Titans offense needs to correct. Puka says pass protection is lacking. Mike Herndon just submits a photo of one Bobby Hart.
Yeah, Bobby Hart's going to be the scapegoat. And, rightfully so. You give up 6 pressures and 2 sacks, Bobby. We're gonna start to look at you, bud.
Ronan says, I think Downing needs to be more aggressive with his play calling on the first 3 drives of the game.
Aggressive how? You want him to bomb it down the field and then have Ryan Tannehill end up with Cam Jordan in his face mask? No. You have to play to your player's strengths right now, and the player's strengths, there's not a lot of strength with Bobby Hart.
Addison says get all 5 linemen to play consistently together. Problem with that is they got to be healthy.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Consistency relies upon extended snaps together, and they can't stay on the field altogether. Has there been a game where all 5 of them have stayed
starters? As far as who started the game?
Like who started and finished the game? Well, I don't know about because Saffold's come in and out anyway. I don't want to get bogged down in this, but I don't know that I'll go back and look this up. I don't know that there's a game that all 5 Titans offensive linemen have played all the way through.
Last one was referee Tony Correnti taunting as much as Cassius Marsh was. 92% say yes.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. That's a tough scene. The Tony Correnti situation and the referee situation, they're gonna ruin it. And by the way, Titans fans, you know who's calling your game on? Well, not calling your game, but officiating your game on Sunday.
Jerome Boger.
The Boger, the bogeyman. The bogeyman. He returns. You got a couple days to sweat that one out. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Blaine and Mickey are up next.